Hello, this is your host Akhil Navluri, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Techospace podcast series. In this podcast episode, I'm super thrilled and honored to welcome our guest, Mr. Gregor Pacnik, who happens to be the head of engineering for Orygen Digital company and the CTO of Neighbourlytics, a startup company that's based in Melbourne. And talking about Greg himself, he's also based out of Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, the same where I'm based out of. Now, Greg, it gives me a super pleasure to welcome you to this podcast episode of mine. So, how are you? And why don't you introduce yourself to our audience in detail?
Thank you, Akhil. It's absolutely awesome to be on the podcast. I am an engineer through and through. Started, coding way before the computer science was even on my radar. Did the usual computer science and masters there, and pretty much stayed in the space of first back end, and then once front end became a thing, engineering, and grew through into the leadership roles, which effectively culminated as a CTO at Neighbourlytics, which I'm pretty sure we're going to go in a bit of detail later on, and now as head of engineering at Orygen Digital, where we effectively look after um, young people, their mental health, but not prevention, more treatment stage. And these days see myself as the most important bridge between stakeholders, business, and how technology can support and enable to achieve whatever mission we might be on.
Brilliant, brilliant, Greg. So, Greg, at the stroke of this hour, which is 8:07 a.m. Melbourne time, let's kick off with the podcast episode. All right. So, Greg, I just wanted to understand this. So as the head of engineering for Orygen Digital, what have your roles and responsibilities been?
Yeah, good question. Um, Different companies will have these roles differently. Let's say Neighbourlytics was CTO at Orygen Digital is head of engineering, other might have VP of engineering and so on. But at some stage in every company you have the the highest technical role, technical position you would have. And this just happens to be head of engineering in Orygen Digital. And it's probably one of the most important roles in the leadership group, because that is usually the sole voice of engineering and technology there to help and lead the leadership group in the strategy and planning, and how does technology enable 12 14 and uh, years down the track, while at the same time obviously leading the engineering team, defining the technical roadmap, mapping the business strategy and the technical strategy, which sometimes is not the most obvious or the simplest one. Um, Making sure that developers are mentored either by individuals or externally, building strong engineering culture, and then more on the HR side, hiring professional development, team scalability, what the cross-functional skills are, and facilitating cross-department collaboration, not just product and design, but others. And of course, everyone's favorite, risk management, system reliability, security, and scalability, making sure
All right.
everything runs.
Brilliant. Now, Greg, you just came across a point stating that, the difference between would like to understand this. Like, what is the difference between the engineering strategy and the technical strategy? So I feel they both are the same points, right? So how do you, give the bridge between that, or let's say the key differentiating factor between that?
Yeah, okay. I would say they're used quite interchangeably. It depends on the company, which company. Some companies focusing more on technology, kind of naming, the others on engineering. Let's say in Origin Digital, engineering means all the developers in QA, and technology means including product. So in Origin Digital specific balance, the technology roadmap is everything we're kind of delivering as a company on in the tech space. So all our apps, systems, interactions, comms. Whereas engineering roadmap is slightly more narrow, and it doesn't always have external visibility. So think about engineering experience, deployability, CI/CD, automated testing, trunk-based development, feature flags, and all those things. The things that need to exist for us to be able to execute on the technology roadmap, which you could call also, regular company roadmap. But there is definitely a component of roadmap that must be there, like a solid foundation, before you can, run at a certain rate to deliver value.
That surely explains the point, Greg. So I got the clear understanding about it. Now, Greg, heading on to to this one. So, as the CTO of Neighbourlytics, what are the key initiatives that you have taken to, let's say, improve the development efficiency and the product quality that is associated with it?
Mm, I love this one. And you're going to start to see a bit of a red thread connecting all my answers. Um, uh, CTO, I would say all the startup titles are hyperinflated. It's not your classic CTO of a 10,000 person company. CTO of Neighbourlytics was, a company of 15 people, still is. So with that comes slightly different flavor of it. So it's less about setting the culture, less about setting a solid strategy that needs to be kind of almost immutable for a period of time. And it's more about on the reactive side. Um, just to clarify that title.
Yeah,
The optimization of development efficiency and product quality, the smaller the team, the smaller the budget, the less certain runway, which is, in other words, startup world. You never know when your paycheck's going to be coming and in what shape. Um, you want to spend every working hour delivering value. So every hour you spend battling with your tools, with your deployments, with your systems is the hour or the whole engineering team that you're not delivering value. So funny enough, people think startups just throw something together. These days you vibe code it. Yeah, that's your first POC, that's your first MVP, whatever. But at some stage, you grow out of that phase, let's call it, and you actually need to start building concrete system that's actually going to be used by many more users than just the first few test users. And in that case, the story completely flips. So what we did, let's say Neighbourlytics, with a very small team, talking a handful of people in engineering, had a robust CI/CD pipeline in all the words. So actual continuous integration and continuous deployment. So every commit that went into the repository got released, but that means automated testing and automated deployment, gated and everything. That allowed us to have trunk-based development.
I would, given an opportunity, I would just love to, know more about it. Given probably in the future, I would just love to, come over to Neighbourlytics and, have an interview with each one with
Mhm.
respect to the, the initiatives that are taken. And I would like to see it from for myself. But really, really, this, sums up and gives me a concrete understanding of how brilliant things are going on.
Mm.
Now, Greg, if I would just like to, understand this, like what are the types of scalable architectures that you have implemented that have, defined the technical vision of Neighbourlytics and, supported its rapid growth and also coming to the final part, its future innovations?
Yeah, exciting stuff. Look, again, very similar to what engineering posture was in terms of how we automated and reduced that overhead. So most every hour that we put in was literally for delivering value. There was no surprises on architecture. Use the principles of evolutionary architecture, which is what our CI/CD pipelines with good test automation and feature flags allowed us to not set perfect architecture up front. We did not know what we'll need, but to set up some kernels of well understood architecture in place and then keep on evolving architecture. People say, oh, architecture should be immutable. Yeah, fair enough. If your underlying load and principles don't change. But if the things change, you need to go and reevaluate. And there is a point in time when you need to adjust the architecture. Now, 20 years ago, architecture had to be immutable because it was physical service in racks in physical buildings. These days, with infrastructure as code and the cloud, you literally have no excuse not to have that codified and automated. So, we try to stay cloud agnostic, which was just a strategic choice.
Okay.
As a startup, we did not know exactly where and how things will go. So we just kept on Kubernetes, vanilla Kubernetes, but not self-hosted, of course. Um, Event-driven design and message brokers, so RabbitMQ, and the big thing was job orchestration on top of it. So splitting jobs, waiting, and joining the jobs. Open source frameworks, of course, for that. Fully auto-scaled infrastructure, cost-effective workloads. We go from having a one teeny tiny pod running to running about, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 pods when we're going through ETLs back to one. So it's really capitalizing on what a cloud is all about, and then optimizing the ETL pipelines, because a big part of Neighbourlytics is ETL pipelines. So consistency, replayability, and stability. So a lot of effort went into making sure that whatever new changes we're putting in, and as they're executing, that we can, if they fail, that we can rerun, so idempotency, but that they also kind of work. And even down to little tricks, like we had a very heavy payload um, for one part of the application, and instead of having a classic API layer delivering that, so you have a server running, serving that bunch of JSONs, whatever, it was static enough that we could literally just upload it to a storage and put CDN in front of it, signed CDN, and use that as an API, because it's still a HTTP request, and that saved us numerous hours making sure that our API is fast, because we just leveraged cloud native infrastructure.
Brilliant. So, I mean, when you just adapted this cloud infrastructure, was that like a sigh of relief for you, Greg, or did you feel that okay, it's fine? But did you previously think that the previous system, or let's say the previous methodology that you have adapted, were you comfortable with that? I mean, was this transition was good with your end, or were you a bit no, I need to take some time to get adapted to this?
Oh, look, there's a couple of questions in there. You're never done. So the whole premise of evolutionary architecture is that it serves you right now, but you need to kind of critically reevaluate. The same as you reevaluate who you are as a company, what your values are, what your strategy is, what your technical strategy, product strategy, technical strategy, engineering strategy. All that down fits into how you use it. The biggest benefit the cloud brings you is the flexibility. So you don't need this service anymore. If you didn't commit to it, you drop it. So that should be part of constant conversation, and that should be part of the strategy to adjust to what you need. And look, cloud is exciting. You spin up lots of things, but we all know, we've all seen the bills where excitement goes the other way. So monitoring, and you are running stuff on someone else's infrastructure. So, security and all those things are still in your mind. So while there is a peace of mind that you can have resources on demand on a reasonable demand, there also comes concerns and responsibilities on the other side. So cloud solves some problems, but bring others. It's yeah, that will probably be the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a smooth way, if I can, just try to, explain that from your words.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
Uh, as far as I can understand that when you were just telling about the cloud architecture, it's kind of smooth. It's kind of smooth, not fully smooth, but it's kind of
Mm.
a smooth approach.
Yeah, yeah. It's you can make it smooth, but as in provisioning and looking after those things, but it comes with a certain skill level and
Challenges.
and a certain technical. But then it's got a
Yeah.
flip side. Yeah, it's
Absolutely, absolutely. So we were just talking about the scalable architectures. Now, Greg, if I would just like to ask you, and I'm pretty sure that you would be very, very excited and enthused with talking about this. So, Greg, what are your key achievements, and in your tenure, what are the success stories that you have experienced as the CTO of your startup company, Neighbourlytics? And did you even, or let's say when you started off fresh in the IT space?
okay. Okay, nice. I'll start with Neighbourlytics first. So Neighbourlytics, I started as head of engineering, and fairly quickly transitioned to a more strategic CTO role. So the difference between those two was head of engineering is more on the execution side, kind of given a bit of direction, whereas CTO operated on the C-level and defined the future vision. At that stage, Neighbourlytics had a lot of brilliant ideas, a lot of untested, unproven ideas. So that's where that executive role came in to help to advise the rest of the executive team. And at that time, Neighbourlytics ETL pipeline consisted of a GIS platform in Excel spreadsheets and Tableau. So it actually ran on data scientist computer,
Okay.
yeah, which is absolutely the right way to do. There is no point investing in huge infrastructure and engineering if you're still proving out the product. And funny enough, we kept certain principles of that going throughout the evolution of the product development and analytics. So but it was the kernel of the start of growth. So I'm quite proud that we took that Excel Tableau combination and pretty much turn it to a always on platform that processes data for the whole Australia definitely something you couldn't do in Excel spreadsheet, I can tell you that. And including the international destinations with pretty much no downtime, fully auto scalable architecture, the thing that literally takes, I don't know, a couple of hours a month, and it just looks after itself. So all the other time we got saved, we can invest in R&D and building the product. So that was obviously not done overnight. That was done over time. And, we had a couple of dead ends, which is what evolution does sometimes, but we always kept that, you know, eye on the target, and we managed to achieve that. So we could keep the team very small and very efficient and effective. At the same time, at Neighbourlytics built the very high performing product and engineering team from scratch. So there was no one, and pretty much hired and make sure that everyone, skills, personalities, desires, passions, future fit together. So we could not just work on the product we needed, not just to execute the engineering strategy and product strategy, but also help grow individuals. So they had that reward as part of them being there. And the non-engineering part in Neighbourlytics was very exciting, was the securing a bunch of strategic partnerships. So that's where a lot of architecture work really came in, because it kind of enabled us, yeah, sure, we want to run and onboard another country, dramas. It's a very small shift, because not that we planned for it, but we thought ahead of it to not preclude or not disqualify that potential option. And as every startup, we had our pivots, and pivots really stress test not just the product but also the team. But in Neighbourlytics, we managed to successfully pivot um, our product based on market feedback a couple of times in a very, very reasonable amount of time. So that was a huge thing.
Okay, so when it came to the market feedback, was it with respect to the feedback coming from the client's end, or was it like, internally within the team, or, people who are like, let's say from the business analyst? Like, how did the feedback, come about?
Yeah, that's a sore point. Any feedback that's not coming from your users, I'm not going to call them clients, I'm going to call them users, because the difference is who pays and who doesn't. So user is the person actually using your application. Any feedback not coming from them, you need to take it with a bucket load of salt. So opinions of subject matter experts, opinions of other experts, opinions of people that are potentially just paying for the tool, but not using it, all that stuff can paint the picture, but
Right.
it should be just put in one bucket and just really carefully considered. So when I talk about market feedback, was actually not just what our users said, but also what our users did, because there is two
Okay.
differences. I can tell you I'm gonna go to gym every day this week, but in reality I'm only gonna go one day, and there is a very big difference of what people say and think and what people do. So
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
focused quite heavily on how to really structure gathering that feedback in a way that it narrowed down as close to the reality and the real users' needs as possible. So yeah, no, that was a huge
Yeah.
chunk of that.
All right.
Um, if you want a short book on how best to solicit feedback,
All right.
the mum test,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably length of a long blog post. To be honest, you can probably read it in about an hour and a half. But that was a bit of a turning point in Neighbourlytics when we started going down that path, where you learn how to interview
Mm-hmm.
people, users, for feedback without them knowing that they're in a feedback session. So have a read through that one. That really made a huge difference.
Brilliant, brilliant, Greg. Now, Greg, when you were just talking about the users, I mean, in which domain were the users pertaining to? Were they from the finance side, or were they from the, let's say from the mining side, or what was the domain that was associated with it?
Yeah, Neighbourlytics end users. There was a couple of different buckets, but I would say our predominant users were city council,
Okay.
people responsible for planning at city councils. Funny enough, because they are sometimes extremely budget constrained and other
Okay.
times have ridiculous deadlines that they need to meet at the last moment. And this is where Neighbourlytics fit in both ways: affordable, but also we had on-demand reporting, whereas in the past, pre-Neighbourlytics times, um, collating a report about a physical area, let's say 1 kilometer radius anywhere in Australia, would take weeks, if not months. Whereas
Absolutely. Yeah.
with our ETL pipelines, that was a matter of minutes, just a matter of aggregating from silver and gold layer in our medallion architecture. So city council workers, but also property developers. So a bit of to justify their decisions, but also to drive some of their decisions. So before they picked sites and after they picked sites, depending on which journey they came in. And then the third type of users were, I'll call them main street operators or small shopping center operators. Not big
Okay.
shopping centers, because they would have their own, data science teams doing numbers within the shopping center, but sort of on the small end, think operators like Lygon Street. Yeah, it's a bit of a location in Melbourne, but how do you know what your offering is? How do you know why people are coming there? When do people come there? And all those things.
All
So
right.
those are all the questions that all these three groups of people, users, had in common, and that's what we kind of um, um, grab from all the feedbacks and distill down into our offering.
Awesome. I mean, that's a pretty unique list and a plethora of list. And completely in that list also, Gregor, what I see is there's a diversity with respect to the business users and the domains. So that's pretty interesting stuff for sure. Now, Greg, if I would just like to, ask this, or let's say if I just would like to understand this, like in depth, Gregor, can you mention about your proficiency and expertise in running the business as the CTO of your startup company, Neighbourlytics?
Oh, yeah. When you run startup in whichever shape or form, you become expert in the things you didn't even know, including how to teach people not to click on the phishing links. I don't know, but no. Jokes aside, look, probably four main dimensions. Very very deep
I'm not able
software
to
is
hear
a
you.
huh. Are you okay?
Yeah, you
Yep.
can go
So
ahead. No problem. Yeah.
all good. Um, Very deep software as a service knowledge, not just what it is, but how it behaves. So figure out how to structure your pricing. Um, Architect scalable subscription-based platforms can allow rapid onboarding and recurring revenue models. The things before you even write a line of code about it. On that level, then that feeds down into multi-tenant infrastructure, reduce operational costs while still being able to service as many users as you need. Um, Back to pricing tiers and value metrics. Use the personas so you can drive the retention and lifetime value of the users. It's like a big cycle where technology is enabler and a driver, but it needs to actively participate. Next step is then definitely digital strategy. So define and execute a roadmap, and again, where technology supports business objectives. Everything from market entry or market re-entry or market pivot all the way to scale. So it kind of product, self-sells. Definitely leveraging emerging technologies, so AI, cloud native tool, APIs, and so on, to unlock new product lines and automate operations. So not just on the infrastructure side, but also on our offering. Yeah, and but we were the kids using AI before AI was cool. Definitely not LLMs, but other more statistically based AIs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And help to position technology capabilities as differentiators. Um, Not so much in sales, but also investor conversations, because
Right.
you would be surprised how many people don't really go in depth of what your capabilities are and what enabler that could be as part of conversation. So be a bit of a champion there. The one thing that I had to quickly acquire was advanced GIS experience,
Okay.
and Neighbourlytics would definitely build like a solid IP core around spatial intelligence, not just how to process it, but what certain things mean based on what our users needed to visualize and report on in their particular domains. So think about, if your GIS offering is your bronze layer, so basic data and operations, we definitely build like a silver and gold layer in principles of what GIS means. What does it mean for a person to dwell at the location? Is it a minute? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes within a particular area? Those are all the kind of, answers on a bit of a a bit of a spectrum, and you need to adjust it. So we build up a whole vocabulary and IP around that. That allowed us to do a lot of vertical specific innovation. So real estate heat maps, engagement visitation sources, and so on. And of course, we wouldn't be startup if we wouldn't have APIs for business to business customers, so they can embed the GIS results directly into their workflows, which
Okay.
also increased Neighbourlytics stickiness. I promise I'm almost done with this one. And the one of the pivots we did, and I'm super proud of, is to go from sales-led to a lot more product-led growth. So being a driver and actually executor of that was absolutely brilliant. So orchestrating the user experience that convert. So focusing the user experience and not just the lip service, the actual user experience in application value discovery and guided journeys. You can't do that without knowing where and how the users are. So metrics, analytics, heat maps, and all those things. So it's pretty almost like another parallel engineering discipline running on top of everything we're offering. So embedded analytics, tracking behavior, and quick iterations. But by quick iterations, I mean like weekly. You have a hypothesis, put it in place, test it. In weeks' time, you got an answer. You can act on it. So literally, week by week by week, we could incrementally deliver that value to users, and which allowed us to use product-led growth as a growth lever. Yeah, reducing dependency on outbound sales and driving scale through our product usage. So it is a CTO role, but
All right.
there was very little about the just pure technology here, and that's where a huge difference is when you're working for a small place. You actually do all of those things. There's probably 10 other things we did, but those are the kind of 4 key things. So in summary, bringing it all together is connected technology to business outcomes,
Yeah.
combining SaaS models, digital foresight, user first product design, data fluency, and really enable the company not just to ship faster but smarter. So
All right.
what best is, and using those disciplines to address and identify users really value, validate that, very quick prototype, and build a system that can scale that in a very short amount of time. So pretty much turning engineering, which sometimes used as it's slow, nothing ever happens in time, blah blah, into a real growth engine, not just a support function.
Yeah. Yeah. That gives a clear understanding of it. Now, Greg, you were just mentioning about a point called GIS. So I just wanted to know more about it, and what is with respect to this categorization of bronze, silver, and gold? Like, I mean,
Ah,
where does that
ah,
start with?
okay, yeah, cool. Let's clean up the medallion architecture. When you talk data warehouses, data lakes, and all that space, one of the potential architectures that you can operate on is a medallion architecture, and you split your data storage, data concepts into 3 layers: bronze, silver, and gold, with the premise of bronze layer is where you store raw data. So you have 6, 7 different
Hmm.
data providers. Some of them give you JSON, some of them gives you Parquet files, some of them give you TXT files, whatever. So
All
in
right.
bronze layer, you just ingest that data into whatever database you have. It doesn't even have to be a single database, um, but in as close to raw format as practically possible. The silver layer is where pretty much all the magic happens. So once you ingest the data from bronze layer to silver layer, first layer of ETLs, silver layer, you normalize the data, you clean up the data, you validate the data, you make sure that it makes sense. So all the quality checks, not missing nulls, volume and statistical checks, distribution checks. So silver layer is your effectively core value that you have. And it's in GIS space gets a bit more complicated. We're going to touch on it in a second. And then your gold layer is where you aggregate the silver layer normalized data into denormalized things, which is your effective end result reports.
Yeah.
And in Neighbourlytics, we've done it in such a way that processing into the silver layer is complex and it takes time. That's why we use cloud infrastructure. Whereas going from silver to gold layer, it's a couple of minutes. So that on demand, anywhere in Australia, for any point in Australia, it's literally a click and you get it within minutes. It's just a matter of aggregating a couple of things. So that's how we, our data engineer helped us structure our approach to processing. It's quite standard. It's not much rocket science. The GIS component of it comes Usually in your silver layer, you only got temporal kind of split. Yeah. So what happened last month, month before, and so on. But
Okay.
because in GIS, we also work in geospatial. So we got left side of Australia to right side of Australia, top of Australia to bottom of Australia. So not just to split it up along the temporal dimension, we also had to split it up by geographical dimension. And that's why we structured it in on a certain level of granularity that made sense for particular data sources, pre-computed. You know, you're probably familiar with H3 geohashes and stuff like that. So just pick a granularity depending on the data source where it made sense, pre-compute that. So then once you have to report on the golden layer, it's just a matter of aggregating pre-packaged buckets together and off it goes.
Totally, that explains. I mean, it's pretty ironical for me, Gregory, that you were just telling from bronze to silver, it's fine. From silver, I mean, from bronze to silver, it takes some time, but from going all the way to silver to gold, it's just a couple of minutes. So
Mm,
I believe that, the data that's associated with in silver, it's all historical data, right? Because you were just telling that
mm.
it's, entire part of Australia, like the east part of Australia, the west part of Australia. So I think it's like a pile of data there.
It is huge. It's pretty much what our data sources provide information about Australia, depending which data source. Some of them have temporal components, some of them have point in time component, provide information about not just Australia, but other countries. I just use Australia as an example, because once you have the system in place, it
Yeah,
doesn't really matter. You
absolutely.
operate on latitude and longitudes. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
providing ingesting, pre-processing, cleaning up the data in a ready-to-go package. So it's almost like part of McDonald's thing. Everything is on shelves, everything is ready. So when the order comes in, things can
Yeah,
happen in a very, very short amount of time. But not just short amount of time, quality is guaranteed because the only thing
yeah.
you're doing is aggregating pre-prepared data. So the quality checks happen when the data goes into the silver layer, when you have time before you can release data as validated, not when you're producing final reports. You do a couple of checks there, but more presence and absence report checks than really in-depth statistical checks.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think I really like the example of that Mechas example where it's all, on the shelf, and that's pretty pretty
Mm.
much good. Now, I'm pretty curious to know this, Greg. Like, we were just talking about the scalable architectures. Now, Greg, can you just give me some insight about the 27 programming languages that you're completely acquainted with? I mean,
I was wondering if that one's gonna come up. Okay, full disclaimer. It actually started as a joke. It started as a joke of English not being my first language and me saying that I'm more fluent in 27 programming languages before English. Okay, that's the origin of that number. But as part of that joke, I actually went through and looked at all the languages that I work with. I wouldn't say I'm super proficient in all of them, but the number actually ended up at about 27, 28, completely coincidental. Um, but then I realized engineers, so I'm probably leaning more towards systems and full stack engineers. I'm not going to speak for others. At some point in their career, they actually have to know that many languages. You need to know, you come across them, probably not in super big detail, but just at least the proficiency level. So I would say between 20 and 30 is a number that most of the engineers will be comfortable with. In some of them super advanced and you're 300, 400 level. In other languages 100, 200 level, enough to be able to operate or to review or to reason about. And it's not, and this is the passionate thing about engineering. You get to keep on learning, but also it's the part where it's potentially a bit invisible to non super heavy engineers that that amount of knowledge is there. But to distill that 27 down, it's really about probably only 5 categories that
okay.
really matter in this space. You got your basic imperative languages, so I think your C, Pythons. Then you move into object-oriented languages, Java, C Sharp, potentially a bit of Ruby. So once you learn, let's say, good principles of object-oriented design in Java, C Sharp, that is completely transferable to the other language. So it's instead of learning a new language, you just learn a bit of a flavor of the language, a couple of particulars about it. So it's a lot easier to move horizontal across these paradigms. Then
Absolutely.
you got your functionals, Erlang and Haskell and Elms and so on. that's always interesting. Declarative. I never thought of HTML as a declarative language, but apparently it is. CSS, but subset of declarative languages is what I like to call set-based languages, and there is only one in there, which is SQL. So that's probably stands out the most. Um,
Okay.
uh, and once you're kind of across those, let's say, paradigms of languages, um, once you know one, going horizontally across it's quite easy to apply. The only set I probably left out is logic programming languages because they don't get to use that much these days. Um, prologues and things like that. At least not in the in the industry. At least the parts where I knew. But I do know Prolog for some weird reason. Don't ask why. So you learn those 4 or 5 categories of languages, and then the rest just comes out of the woodwork. And I would say vast majority of engineers are across all of them.
Brilliant. I mean that's a clear understanding about the categorization that you have just named about. Now, Greg, I just wanted to know this personally from you. Like, what is your take on the on the low code no code languages? Like you were just telling about the logic based language, right? So what do you reckon from the low code languages?
Yeah, are you referring to the classic no-code languages, or you're referring to LLMs and agents to write
When I
code?
refer to the low code no code languages, they can come from the likes of Pega, Appian, OutSystems, and
Yeah, okay.
Melodix.
Yeah, look, uh, those things wouldn't exist if there wouldn't be a need. And like
Yeah.
everything, you need to use the right tool for the job. If and look, I fully support use of them in certain contexts. If you don't have engineering capability, if you're prototyping things, if it's a one-off, if it's something that you're not really sure, I use those tools. I use you know LLMs to help me prototype code, do this, use the low code, no code languages. That's brilliant for once off, twice off. The challenge then becomes once that becomes a regular thing, is it becomes your monthly process, becomes part of the product. That's where some of them kind of fall apart, where it's operability. That's where it makes sense to either translate that to language that's more supported, or some of those actually export things. Or it sometimes falls apart where you need to do something that's wasn't particularly built for. Let's say, I
Yeah.
don't know, implement recursion. Some of those languages or no code languages might not really know or deal well with recursion if you really need it. So there are limits, absolutely useful. Just don't consider them as production ready that you can put it into a big pipeline of or product where you do. Look, very similar um, to the cloud. Lots of people think, oh, I'm going to use cloud. I'm going to go on AWS console. I'm going to click here. I'm going to have this bucket. I'm going to click here. I'm going to have AWS. We're gonna cloud formation. I'm going to do this. That is ClickOps. That's pretty much low code language. But when in reality, as an engineering team, you need to use cloud. You don't use the console. You need to do it via CLI. You need to codify your thing. So it's exactly the same kind of spectrum things. Yeah. So yes, I like them. I support them. If anyone, even non-engineer needs, I provide all the support and mentoring that's needed. But they got a time and place. Um,
Absolutely. It just fills the requirement and what is the need for that particular thing. And yeah,
well, whatever tool you need to prove or to remove that pain, produce that report,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
indeed, indeed, indeed. Right. That is there for sure. Now, Greg, I just would like to, personally ask you this. Like, I mean, how would you differentiate between the sales and the product-led growth?
Oh, okay. Okay. Full disclaimer, never big on sales. Never thought I'm going to be talking about sales. Never thought I'm going to be involved with sales. I was as classic engineers as you get. Sales to me was some magical faraway thing that other people did and had no idea, or marketing. So as part of Neighbourlytics, I learned a lot in a very short amount of time. And um, the the s- the the sales-led approach, which is quite heavy in B2B and small companies and big companies and everywhere, is pretty much relationship driven. Yeah, you actually need to build relationships with potential clients, customers, users, whatever you want to call them. It's quite high touch. So it's, not just when you want to make a sale, it's months leading up to the potential sale or deal. So it's got very long deal cycles. Yeah. Let's say at Neighbourlytics, it wouldn't be uncommon for us to between 6 and 9 months just from starting the relationship, even sometimes from warm introduction until the deal would land. That's a space. Just because of our domain. Other places sales led could be faster, but it is that build up relationship, keep on maintaining the relationship, stay in touch, be visible, but the deals are slightly chunkier. Yeah. Whereas the product led growth is where you not ignore, but you turn the story upside down and you go, you make product work for you. So it's user centric and user first approach in application, in your offering. Yeah. So obviously talking about digital offering here. I'm not talking about other companies. So, but for that, you need to understand what metrics you can and do collect, how users are experiencing your product, because there is every user you lose on your journey is an opportunity lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your in-product conversions are absolutely cornerstone of that. What I mean by in-product conversions, classic funnel. Everyone that even hears of you is already thinking about your product. Hard to figure out the metrics for that. But the moment they land on your brochureware, your public website, decide to sign up or log in, what's the first step they do? And so on and so on. Until the point in product-led growth balance, they have an aha moment. So an aha moment is when the user goes, oh, that's what this product does for me. Oh, it saves me money, makes something faster. Oh, this, I get it. I get it now. Yeah, I want this. So that's an aha moment. And that's the whole point of product-led growth. You need to get a user from thinking about you as product company until that aha moment in as fast time as possible. Sometimes that might be still measured in weeks. I'm not saying it happens in minutes, but it's that aha moment that you're chasing, and you're polishing and cleaning up the path in front of them for them to be able to get to the aha moment, because that's where your recurrence, that's where your repeated value visitation, and that's where your upselling that can come from. Yeah, that's the key thing, which is completely different to your sales led, where you go, our product does everything, our product does awesome things. You can drive the narrative there. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
huge difference between them is the customer acquisition cost. So sales led, not even gonna talk about lunches and things. You need to have physical person talking to a physical person or bunch of people, time and so on and so on. In the product led is engineering, product driven, still investment, but it's one-to-many investment. Yeah. So for every little polish you do for the users to get to the aha moment, that applies to all the users in that segment. So it's one-to-many effort, whereas sales-led is more one-to-one, slightly better. And look,
Yeah.
there is nothing wrong by using both. Hybrid go-to-market. You're just gonna stretch yourself thin. So I reckon if you're going down startup SaaS, pick one and go with it. PLG is well understood these days,
Yeah.
unless you have a lot of potential relationships already. Yeah, I would definitely probably pick PLG.
Brilliant. That gives the clear picture of me. I mean, that gives a clear picture of this, the concept that you just, mentioned about, Greg. So now, Greg, like, what are the types of technologies that you have used to, let's say, deliver these innovative financial solutions that have, helped in boosting the revenue and yet again mitigating the risk? So what went about with that?
Yeah, the beautiful balance of running fast and trying not to stumble. Um,
Yeah.
Look, probably by now it's not going to be a surprise. Incremental innovation. So modular product strategies, releasing new features in small control iterations, evolutionary architecture, and all those things that comes with it. That's the engine that supports that. Yeah, without that, you're gonna have probably too much stop start. New agentic AI and all that stuff might allow you to prototype, which is brilliant, and you definitely should build that into it. But at some stage, once you prototype, once you prove it, you still need to deliver it. So there is translation into a good infrastructure.
Yeah.
Very tight validation loops, A/B testing, canary releases, user feedbacks, user metrics, validating features before big rollout. So that's where your semi-feature flags come in, yeah, to test your hypothesis. But then flip side, internal, yeah, risk scoring systems. So rule-based machine learning and AI-driven models to continuously assess end users' risks as part of the business workflows. Think insurance and risks there, and all the due diligence. Unfortunately, you can't skip it. Secure data handling, end-to-end encryptions, tokenization, role-based access to protect sensitive financial data, because you definitely don't want to be on the news of yet another financial company lost all the users thing. So yeah, run fast but sensible.
That's
Um,
sensible. Yeah.
Proactive monitoring, so real-time monitoring, anomaly detection. So you definitely want to catch at least the things you know about as early as practically possible. But that is an investment. Some tools bring that out of the box, but you actually need to still configure them and set them up, not ignore them. Fail-safe architectures, so resilient systems, circuit breakers, retries, graceful degradation. Almost this is like reading you a book of good engineering practices, but they are good engineering practices because they work. It's not because someone decided that they're good, yeah. And then, funny enough, probably by far the biggest return on investment you can have is cross-functional collaboration.
Yeah.
Make friends with compliance, legal, product teams. So when you're operating, when you're working on the product, especially from the engineering side, you have a 5-minute conversation instead of 4 weeks of meetings. That can make a tremendous difference, especially when you're pushing the boundary a little bit, and innovation and allows you to deliver faster. I mentioned feature flags before, but I'm gonna mention them there. They are absolutely brilliant. They are one of the most awesome tools in how you can drive innovation, because you can have innovative feature that is half baked and it's half broken in production, being tested by real users in a very isolated space while not impacting others. I reckon that's one of the big things. And just be super lean. So MVPs, and as I said, um, new features in a state that you're potentially uncomfortable of how well they're designed, because you need to learn a lot faster than you even imagine,
Yeah.
obviously depending on industry. But we've done that in a highly regulated financial industry where people are very sensitive about this. It's doable. You just need to find that level. So putting all those things together, you definitely can. You're not running as fast as a teeny tiny startup. You're not running as fast as a prototype with LLM. I'm not gonna lie about that. But you can definitely move a lot faster than the classic product flow, which this can fit into.
Exactly. Taking the right approach and balancing it out.
Mm.
Now, Greg, I mean, I'm a data science student, and again, I had a subject called professional practice in IT, if I would just like to name it, and we were just told to create the Jenkins. Only thing, every time, this is the question I would just like to ask to any technology practitioner, like, what do you exactly reckon by the term called tokenization? I mean, I always get a little bit confused with respect to that.
Yeah, okay. With rise of LLM, tokenization's got another meaning now. Tokenization currently means splitting up the word into the chunks that Gen AI and those systems can read. But beforehand, I'm talking about classic tokenization. Um, you you wouldn't store credit card details in your database. What you
Hmm.
would do is you would submit the credit card details to a different service a lot more securely organized or third party that looks after that, and you would get back a token about that credit card, and you only store that token in your database. So even and when, these days it's more about just when your database does get compromised, the attacker only gets the token, which is absolutely meaningless without access to the third party service or isolated service or super secure service or whatever that that not just holds the credit card data, but also does the credit card transactions. So there is specialized providers there. Same thing goes for emails, first names, line, all the PII and secure data. You can in a certain way tokenize it. So when the things do get compromised, at least you compartmentalize that and reduce the fallout or whatever the impact it can have. So tokenization in that sense.
All right. That completely puts a point across to me. Now, I mean, this is pretty much like a very good statement. I don't know. I think it comes from a Southeast Asian term probably. So we just like to dwell more on that. So, Greg, I would just like to understand this. Like, what is your take on Kaizen, the principle that is underlying the agile in the in the field of engineering and the field of and the theory of constraints. I would not say Southeast Asian probably, but I would just say somewhere to the north of it, if my geography is not right here in this way.
You need a GIS system, yes. Look, Kaizen, as far as I know, Japanese origin in lean manufacturing. Toyota is a big, kicked it off, and a big driver behind those things. And but I think it comes from the cultural setup where it by default it means Kaizen is continuous improvement through small incremental changes across the whole company. So not talking stand-ups and retrospectives, but every person owns the responsibility for improvement, and those improvements can be very small. And obviously, once you get rid of the small ones, they get slightly chunkier. But it's about removing teeny tiny bottlenecks before they come bottlenecks. Do you really need to have a meeting about this? Do you really need to have 4 people approving this? How do you do
Hmm.
go-to-market implementation? How do you strategic planning? You can improve each and every one of those, because a minute saved is a minute that you can use for delivering value. All those things are about delivering value, but you can squeeze even more out of it. But it's not someone's job; it's everyone's responsibility. That's a big part of Kaizen, and I like to teach it that way. And then flip side, and kind of hand in hand with Kaizen, is the theory of constraints. Again, coming from roughly the same space of classic manufacturing. Um, no point optimizing something that runs well. You can throw resources at it, just going to run a bit better. Whereas if you go and focus on a bottleneck, any effort you put in there can dramatically improve your throughput. Yeah. And as a company, you're putting through value to the end users. Either it's new features, either it's fulfillment, whatever. Yeah. But the key thing is, I mean, so far everyone goes, yeah, sure, of course, address the bottleneck. Yeah, but how do you know where you have bottlenecks? So theory of constraints is all about measuring and
Yeah.
understanding your flows of value and understanding where it blocks and where it accumulates. So in theory of constraints, they talk about where your stock goes up before a particular workstation. That could be a backlog of features. That could be number of epics in your thing. That could be number of tickets in to be tested column. Everywhere you have a bit of stock and it accumulates, where changing the system or adding more people to it, it's going to improve it, or actually approach it completely differently. That's what addressing the bottleneck is. Once you know the bottleneck's there, it's okay. It usually easy, semi-reasonable to address, but you need to know that you have a bottleneck. So that's the big thing. So between those two things, yeah, everyone's responsibility to do the small incremental improvements and identifying the bottleneck. So being really keep an eye on the target. You can achieve a lot with very little. Yeah, um, very close to my heart.
Yeah, I totally, understand that with respect to this. And I mean, I really like the name Kaizen, that actually is a very catchy kind of a term, if
Mm.
I would just like to, put it across.
Yeah, it definitely along with fair few other terms from the lean methodologies. Yes, it helps that it's a single word that describes a principle, but you need to understand and know the principle, and then you operate with that word. But yeah, it's nice and clear and concise. I like it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I mean, we were just talking about the, the technologies and stuff. Now, when you're assigned a project in the Neighbourlytics, like what is the front end technology that you're using to create these front end interfaces for the business? Like in your experience, what would you like to name?
Yeah, look, startups, even at Orygen Digital. any technology where you actually need to produce where you're working on a product that's going to survive more than a month. Take the most boring and test the technology. There is the winning equation we did at Neighbourlytics, and I'm super proud of, is we took battle tested technologies that as boring as it gets, and did amazing things with them. And there is multiple reasons for that. Support, huge internet out there. Blog posts, how to go about articles. When the migrations do happen, lots of people write about it. It's not going to be sunset, and you're not going to be wasting time moving to another framework. So Neighbourlytics, you ask in particular, React, simple front end, GIS, open source packages that support that got longevity and things like that. In the back end, Celery for our job orchestration and ETL orchestration, Kubernetes. So none of those alone would go, oh, I wish I would be working on something. No, as boring as it gets, you got the highest chance that people actually used it in the past, that they don't have to use it. The highest chance that people can reason about it. A lot of that development UX has been addressed. Documentation is there, tests are there, practices are there, all those things are there. You need to capitalize on that, because your point is not using sexy technology. Your point is delivering value. Now, if there is no solution, by all means, go and find something, create something. But that should be a small change. That should be a small increment. When you're, let's say, in a space where Neighbourlytics technology was an enabler, technology wasn't the point on itself, like, agentic AI and stuff like that these days. You use the technology that delivers value to you as well. So you don't have to battle with it constantly and all the time. Yeah.
Brilliantly. That completely proves a point. So, Greg, before we actually, conclude our podcast session, let's take a lighter route. Like all this while I was just, asking you questions about your tenure, about the success stories, then about, the scalable architectures. Now, pretty lighter route about your, likes and interests in the form of a rapid fire round. All right?
Sure. Okay.
All right. Okay, Greg. So, Greg, like, what is your favorite football team, like, that you have supported since your childhood?
Can I tell you I'm not a sports person, but I
Okay.
can. But moving to Australia, I had to pick an AFL team, so they're doggies. So if I have to support any team, not from childhood, it would be Western Bulldogs.
Western Bulldogs. Okay, that's the place where I am based out. I'm based out of Tarnet. So probably the entire Westerners of Melbourne, we support Tarnet, but support the Western Bulldogs. But I'm personally a Richmond fan. So
Sorry to hear that, mate.
I know everyone tells me this. I totally, get that. Now, I mean, Greg, you were just talking about, that English was not your first language. So what was your first language while you were growing up?
Slovenian. But funny thing is, Slovenia being a teeny tiny country in a central part of Europe, it's at a crossroads of four major language groups.
Okay.
Slovenian is Slavic, then Germanic on the north with Austria, Romanic language, Italian on the west, and former Hun language in Hungarian on the east. Um, we got about over 200 dialects in a very small area, about half of Tassie. Anyway, what I'm meant to say is, even though I'm Slovenian, I probably never spoke proper Slovenian in my life. So speaking a
Oh,
particular dialect of Slovenian, because probably only a handful of people can speak proper Slovenian, if you ask me. So
okay.
even in that subset of language, struggle.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty trivia kind of a thing because personally, Greg, I'm a person who just loves to know about geographies and countries. So I was pretty inquisitive to ask you that question personally,
Mm,
and I've heard a lot about Slovenia, and it's a beautiful country for sure.
absolutely magical country. If you have a chance, you definitely should visit.
100%, 100%. Okay, so the next question after you, if I ever visit Slovenia, what is that particular place that you would like to recommend me?
It's a teeny tiny country, so stop thinking about the size of Australia or other big countries. You can probably cross the country in about 3 hours. So
Okay.
that should give you an idea. Look, beautiful mountains, Bled, capital of Slovenia, Ljubljana, magical medieval, actually old Roman city. So
Okay.
it's built on old Roman city called Emona, all the way down to the east, where we have one of the oldest wine cellars, also predating Roman times,
Okay.
in Ptuj and things like that. So a lot of history in there, a lot of small streets, but don't just rush left, right, and center. Sit down, soak in the culture. People are very friendly. There is this farm stays where you go and just stay at a farm. Absolutely have to do that, and they're definitely gonna feed you very well.
Okay. Brilliant, brilliant. Probably that's now in my wish list. So particularly I will go probably, when I'll hear this episode, I'll just get the clear idea about, okay, these are the places, and for sure I'll go there.
Absolutely. Make sure you reach out when you start the plan. I'm happy to give you more details.
100%, 100%, Greg. I'll keep you updated on that. So, Greg, what's your favorite, what is your favorite cuisine that that you always prefer the most?
Ooh, okay. Um, it was Mexican.
Okay.
But I grew a bit tired of it. So these days, still exploring cuisines, to be honest, even after 15 years in Australia, probably Southeast Asian. So these days, whenever I want to be a bit of adventurous or want to try something new, I definitely go Southeast Asian these days. Yeah.
Southeast Asian, does it, confer to Vietnamese, or does it confer to any Malaysian food?
Yeah, Malaysian, Vietnamese. I'm still a bit novel in exactly my cooking of that, but yes, along that range. Yeah, a bit of sweet and spicy, a bit of, very umami. I mean, I
Okay.
like Japanese, but I'm not at a cooking skill level, um,
Okay.
of doing that. But yeah, Southeast Asian for now.
Southeast Asian. All right. So if I have to, give you four film franchises, which one would you choose? Would it be Harry Potter, Indiana Jones, James Bond, or the Marvel franchise?
Well, Indiana Jones, no doubt about it. That's probably
Okay.
goes to show my vintage.
Okay. What's your particular reason? Like, have you seen that in your childhood like multiple
Oh
times?
yeah, yeah. Grew up with India Jones. I mean, also James Bond, but lately James Bond just kind of. I mean, technology was super exciting in the early pieces, but now
Yeah.
it's just you know too much action. Whereas Indiana Jones was also action, but on a different level.
Yeah.
Always
True.
that borderline action.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something sits well with that, and also games and stuff along those lines. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Truly.
probably too
Truly.
old for Harry Potter.
I come from the generation where, I'm a 90s kid. So I'm a 90s person. So, we just love Harry Potter. And even, yeah, Indiana Jones is also something. The thing about 90s people is we are game for anything. Even when it comes to the retro movies, we're like, okay, we will just, have a look at that.
Yeah, yeah. Every generation's got its quirks, absolutely.
Indeed, indeed. So, Greg, finally, thank you so much for, making time and being part of my podcast initiative. I just had a great conversation, through these, different insights which you have shared with me. Finally, we made it with respect to the podcast. And I mean, I would just give a background to all my listeners. Like me and Greg, we met in one of the Amazon event. Like it was a 2 days podcast event. And there I just came across Greg, and me and Greg, we just, built a great rapport, and finally we are here with this beautiful collaboration.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you very much for having me. It was a very interesting conversation. Even though we had a bit of an idea what we're going to be talking about, I'm quite happy that it went quite smooth, and we managed to navigate and dig a bit deeper in a couple of fields. Yeah, so fabulous being here.
So on this note, this is your host Akhil Navluri signing off. We would be back with another podcast episode very soon with another industry leader. So till then, take care, goodbye, thank you, stay tuned, and au revoir. Thank you.